as far as commander's actions, I'll give a brief overview. Some things that will be helpful. If you are sending those 4833s out to legal personnel or SJA, some things to keep in mind. I will review those with you as well, just so you're aware. So with the case that we just created, because we have an approved report, I can now go get the commander's action and send that out. So one thing to keep in mind with alerts, in order to find that commander's action record, one, the case has to have a subject with the commander's action marked as yes. The finding cannot be under investigation, and it has to have an approved report. Those are 3 things to keep in mind for the commander's action.
Yeah, so Katie, when we jump in here, so folks that are coming in from the outside from other agencies may not be familiar what even the commander's action is and what it's for. So let me just give a very brief, we're going to go into a brief summary of this. So, and I'll even in terms of fingerprints, right? So when we send in fingerprints to the FBI, we have 15 days after we mark a qualifying offense is founded to obtain and successfully submit those prints to the FBI. And so let's say, for example, we do it based on 3 different qualifying founded offenses that the individual did. There's, an assault, something with drugs, and, I don't know, making a false official statement or something, after I submit that set of fingerprints in and it goes into III, it goes into the NGI, the Next Generation Identification System, that information flows into the NCIC III environment. What I have to do is I have to follow up with what happened, the adjudication information. So, what goes in initially is what they're suspected of, where we have probable cause to believe that they committed, that was a qualifying offense. But I need to circle back in the end and go, okay, well, what happened in the end? Did they get, even though at the beginning of the investigation we had probable cause, at the end maybe they were exonerated. So we need to go and correct that. And we needed to indicate what happened to that individual, because certain things are disqualifiers for other things. For example, if in the end, because of the offenses that they were charged with, and they got, they got punished against, maybe they received a general court-martial. And if so, that information needs to be known by the FBI, because that's a trigger for NICS, the National Instant Background Check System. So if they got a general court-martial, they will never again be able to buy, trade, transport, or receive as a gift any weapons or ammunition or explosives for the rest of their lives. And how we get that information to them is by following up with the adjudication information and submitting that as part of a follow-up for the fingerprint record, or submitting it via NCIC. So where we get that adjudication information in the Army is from, basically it's from the commanders. What did the commander do? Because they could have received those same 3 offenses and say, yeah, I got it, understood that you have probable cause for that. I'm not going to charge them with that, but I am going to charge them with this. And this is what we're going to do to that individual. And so the nice thing, in the Army is we do have that Department of the Army Form 4833, which is the commander's report of disciplinary action. And that's our part of our mechanism for getting that adjudication information back, and which is why we have this whole other portal. And that allows us, because we have that formalized process, to easily, I'll say that in quotes, obtain that adjudication information for our records and for the Crime Record Center to understand and look at, and for us to follow up on those fingerprint records to submit that information into III.
All right. Yep. Thank you. So I know some of you on today, the names are familiar, but there are some helpful things, even if you're familiar with alerts or new, that kind of trip people up when they're trying to look for the commander's action. So the case that we worked on before the break, we've got an approved report, so I need to send out this commander's action. So under tools, and again, this is a permission. as well. So you can give access to it or take access away, depending on that individual's job. So under Commander's Action, you'll get options to search. So case number, we happen to know the case number, but if you don't, you can do a range. If you're not sure what the number is, you can do by the ID of the subject. In this case, we don't yet have a final report, but you could search by the date that that report was approved. Like I said, we know the case number, so I'm going to go ahead and type that in. And it defaults, because we're logged in to Fort Hood, it'll default to that unit number. So I'm going to go ahead and click search. And you'll see here the case number, so I can access the case from here if I needed to. But I can go directly into that record and start the Commander's Action if I needed to. So in this case, I'm going to go ahead and click the name. And what it's going to pre-fill is essentially all these tabs. If you look up a DA form 4833 online, you'll see the same PDF. What we've done is taken all those sections and placed them into tabs. Just to make it a little easier to see. Not all the information has to be filled in. But you'll see here, the referred information is where it's coming from, which is Fort Hood. You'll see the CRC number that we gave it, the case number, and the suspense date. This suspense date does have a default. And as you'll see, it's 60 days. You can edit this suspense date if the legal personnel or the commander need more time. You can update this afterward, but just by default, it's 60 days, but you can change that. And then down below, it pre-fills that subject's information. And as you'll see here, we don't yet see anything down in section 3 of the form, which would be the offenses. And that's because we haven't yet saved this record. So I'm going to go ahead and click save, so you can see what that looks like. So now we've started the 4833. We haven't yet sent it to anybody. It's pending. So at this point, I may need to figure out who I have to send it to. And the benefit of alerts is you don't have to send any PDF or email anything to the individual. As long as they have a .mil email, address, and a common access card, they'll be able to complete the form or fill it out within alerts. And I'll show you that here in a second. So I'm actually going to send it to myself. Typically, you wouldn't do that. You would send it to the SJA or a paralegal, and they would identify the commander. But just for purposes of today, I am the commander, so I'll input my email again. As long as they have a .mil email and a common access card, they can be sent that 4833. So I'm going to go ahead and click OK. For whatever reason, if you input the wrong email address or input the wrong person, you can always recall it and resend it. What this will do now in alerts is it's going to send an email to that individual, letting them know they have a commander's action. It does send them a reminder if they haven't logged in within 5 days to view it. It will send them a reminder. It will also send you an email reminder as well that they have not logged in and viewed it. And this may be that email now. I can show you what that looks like. So in case you were curious, this is what that email looks like. You've been assigned a commander's action. It's going to give them the web address. It does give them the help desk email address in case they have any questions or problems logging in. If they have specific questions on filling out that commander's action, the help desk would refer them back to the unit. So let me go back to alerts. I'm actually going to log out. So for any of you who are not familiar with what the commander's action login area would look like, that's what we're going to take a look at now. So again, they're going to go to the same website that you all do. In order to log in, they have to agree to the notice and consent and accept the terms. instead of clicking the alerts login like you all do when you would log in, they would click the commander's action login. So from here, they're going to get a different screen with a lot less information. All they're going to be able to see is those actions that they need to look at or view. So you'll see here, in this particular instance, I can see the case number, the name, who sent it to me. If I needed to add other individuals, maybe my paralegal, as a commander, I can click that option and click select and add other emails here as well. But at this point, when I'm ready to fill out this commander's action, I know what action was taken, I can click edit. And you'll see here, they won't be able to change this top section because that's already filled in when the 4833 started. The subject information. The important thing on this first tab is going to be section 3. So did they take action or not?
So it just a couple quick points. So the commander's action, this whole section is kind of like a little portal within alerts, right? So it's definitely tied to the commander, or eventually will be. If you notice when she did that, she had the option at the top to assign it to the commander, and that's key because wherever you put in that commander field is the only one that's allowed to digitally sign this at the very end. But there are also up to 4 or 5 other assignees that are in there. And so very often what happens is we don't know who the commander is that's going to sign it. So we assign the assignees, which might be the command sergeant major of that unit and the SJA for that unit, et cetera, and they're the ones that work up this form initially, get all the salient details in there, and then they assign who the commander is going to be. Because again, whoever's in that commander block is the only one that's allowed to sign this and submit it back to us. Another point on this, the way that this form is, as Katie indicated, this is based on an approved Department of the Army form, DA form 4833. It's laid out and has every single thing on here is exactly like the original form. So it's cumbersome because the form is cumbersome. There's lots of blocks in this 4833 that never get filled out, but they're there because that's what the form is like. In the future, this form might end up going away. We have a connection with the Military Justice Online system, which is the Army JAG system, which backfills alerts with a lot of the data we would need that would need for the adjudication purposes. That said, it is a valuable form for us. It provides us with a lot of information. We've made this electronic, and again, so we can get rid of the old days where we're shuffling around tons of different versions by email or printing them out. This is purely electronic and can stay this way for the entire process. And through the life cycle of a 4833, it may be that the original commander has PCS and now it falls on another commander, and that's why it has that flexibility of changing who's assigned as the commander or the other assignees.
So as you'll see, I'm going to mention a couple things because I know we have a couple of users that are already in alerts, things that kind of don't necessarily trip people up, but just helpful tips if you get contacted by someone trying to fill this out. For example, in this first section here, it was action taken, yes or no. It just varies on what it is. In this instance, we're going to go click yes because I want to give you a little tip on the next page. Again, I'm logged in as a commander filling this out, so you won't necessarily see this view unless you log in as the commander, assign it to yourself, and then log in under the commander's action portal. I'm going to scroll back up to the top, and then on the next tab, again, it's built out, so all the sections are numbered. Did they have a court martial or was it just administrative? If they do select judicial or non-judicial, depending on what was taken, you're going to see something pre-filled here, and this trips up some of the commanders just a little bit. So when they click this, court-martialed or it was just an Article 15, they can click save and it's actually going to pre-fill those offenses for them. They don't have to add them individually. If they happen to duplicate this information, you can remove it so it doesn't show 2 offenses here. But it's always a good idea if you're working with the commanders and they're filling out section 4, have them put in what action and then click save so they can see those offenses pre-filled for them already. If there's other offenses that come out of the court-martial that are not within the case already in alerts, they can click add and type that in and enter the plea in the finding. In this case, I'll go ahead and just pre-fill so you can see what this looks like for the offense. So again, this is taken from what we record in alerts. So in this case, it was aggravated assault. We'll put in that they pled no contest, but it ended up they were found guilty. So depending on the outcome, you can use the same offense that is, they can use the same offense that is from alerts, or they can type that in this case, just so you can see what this looks like. And for time, I'm just going to click same as charge and it'll pre-fill. I'm going to look at some of these other tabs, but I do want to get to the commander's remarks just because there's some helpful information for you all if you are working with them to fill this out. Any admin actions, whether they had counseling or reprimand, any other things that they were referred to, you can document the dates. If there's any other actions, you'll see here dates. A couple of them have durations. So it could be years, months, days. Again, there is, I think it's on the next tab regarding the firearms. It's possible. It's on a different one. Sorry about that. Separation, if they were chaptered out, you'd identify that here. And again, these are just like if you were to download the 4833 form from online, a blank one. And then here as well, fines, incarceration. And then down here is where you'll see prohibited from firearm possession. So I think that was just mentioned. So this was within the last few years added. So it's important to note that that is there as well. Once you fill out any of those sanctions or actions or fines, under here for suspended, once you save those, there's some additional fields that you can fill out depending on if they were suspended or not. One thing I do want to mention for this commander's remarks that is helpful, down here in section 11 is where they actually electronically sign it. So they would input their grade. So I'll just type something in and sign it. It just verifies that they want to sign it and I'll click OK. Just for you all so you're aware, a lot of times the commanders will say, all right, I'm done. I'm going to go back here, and they close out, and what they forgot to do was actually submit the form. So if you see a 4833 and ready to submit, the commander needs to log back in and click submit. They've only signed it. So in this case, they'll still be able to see it when they log in, but what they need to do is go back under edit and go back to the remarks and click submit. So once they click submit, you'll be able to review it, what they've put in, and approve it or not, or disapprove it. If you disapprove it, they'll get an email letting them know and what they need to fix. So the system will automatically send emails for that action. In this particular case, I'm the only one assigned. You can have up to 5 assignees working on this commander's action. The commander themselves, if you've added any attachments that are part of this that you want them to view, you can upload that, whether it's a PDF, Word document. They can also view that ROI. So the same ROI that we looked at earlier, they'll be able to see that in a PDF. And then again, we mentioned that alerts does have a connection to the military justice system. Their process is a little bit longer, but as soon as their investigations close, the information is transferred back to alerts, so you can see some additional information from that system back in alerts as well, and it helps fill in some of the gaps on the commander's action too. So whether you're a commander or you're just the agent or the SAC at the unit, you can view this information once we get the data back from the closed investigation from the military justice system.
Because we can get that information electronically, including, of course, the full 4833, we've also leveraged that to automatically populate what in the fingerprint world was a form R84, which was this adjudication, this disposition information, what was really, handed down as far as punishment and everything else. Normally, you'd have to fill out this green form separately, manually, and then send it into the FBI. What we do is every month when we run our big criminal justice information report dashboard, we also take a look at all the 4833s that have been completed. We pull the adjudication information out from those, match it up with previously submitted fingerprint records, and submit that automatically to the FBI. So we no longer require anybody, any Army law enforcement person to complete an R84, because we do it all automatically. And by doing it and pulling it from the system, we also keep, as much as possible, as long as the data was entered in correctly, we don't have to worry about transposition errors of names and dates of birth and social security numbers being wrong, or them putting something in the wrong block on the form. It's already automatically filled in. So I just wanted to give you that nugget. That's why, though, it is so critical and so important that you guys work with these commanders and follow up with them and get that 4833 information back. Because if we don't have it, it does not get submitted. It's not there for NICS to use to prevent folks from having, obtaining weapons when they shouldn't. It's not in there for, if we don't know that they actually got charged with something with, sexual misconduct with a minor, that information doesn't get into III. And now when somebody does a background check to, because they want to look at child youth services or whatever, or be a foster parent, that information is not in there. So in order for us to get that information into the FBI, we have to get these 4833s completed successfully and back in the system.
Again, the important thing here is the commanders need to make sure they sign and then also submit. So once they submit it, you'll see on here, it falls off of their view and it's back in your, back with you for approval. I am actually going to go back to the main page because I'm shifting back as the agent or the SAC again. I want to show you, we'll work with the case that we looked at earlier. All right. So in this particular case, let's say we need to transfer it to the military police for them to continue documenting, I don't know, CODIS or fingerprint or vice versa. Let's say, forgetting that this is with the Fort Hood CID office, let's say the MPs at Fort Hood started it, they need to transfer the case. So within alerts, sending a case to even another CID unit or the MPs sending it to the CID office is fairly easy to do. So as long as the case is created, it has all the no reports sitting in submitted status. Under the case action is where you would do that. So transfer case, you'll get an option to pick a unit or an installation. Just for this example, we'll just transfer it to another CID office. So we'll just pick Fort Drum. Obviously, this may not be realistic, but it kind of gives you the idea of how easily you can just send a case to another office or you can send it to the MPs or vice versa. So once you pick the unit, you'll click OK. This is then going to send them a notification that they have a case awaiting their acceptance. So I'm actually going to exit now, and then I'll show you what that looks like on the other end, and we'll look at the case history again. So I'm going to change my unit to Fort Drum. As you can see here, because I have notifications on my main page, I see, all right, they've sent me a case transfer request. So I can click it from the notification. You can also go under the admin menu, as you see here noted in the message, and click case transfers as well. So you have two options to get to it.
So I just want to make just a quick distinction here. This is a wholesale transfer of the case. This is not the same thing as doing an RFA to somebody, right? We talked about that earlier, how you can add case agents if you need information. This is a wholesale transfer of this case. So just keep that in mind. Over.
Correct. It'll send them everything. So if you've put attachments in there, all of that is going to be included. So just for ease of this, I'm going to click the case number. You'll see here, I haven't yet accepted it, so it is technically still with the Fort Hood CID office. If I go under the case history, you'll see they initiated the case, they've sent it over to me, well, to my unit, and it's pending. So maybe, I don't know, they picked the wrong unit, or I do need to accept it. I can't do it from here at this point, but I can just see that it's pending. Maybe I need to verify something before I want to accept it or call them on the phone, whatever the case may be. So let me exit out of here. And then I'll go under admin and then case transfer. So now I can see that that case is here. I've got another one from the MPs. We'll leave that one for there for now. But again, it's going to keep the CRC number we assigned. It gives you a date. You can still view the case. You can accept the transfer or disapprove it. In this case, I'm going to go ahead and approve it just so you can see what that looks like.
And Katie, this is the ability to transfer and to accept transfers. That's a separate permission. Is that correct?
Correct. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So you'll see here, one thing to note is there's a case number that has changed. So at Fort Drum, this is going to be their first case. It has the year, their CID unit number, but it keeps that CRC number. So even if cases move between units or move between the MPs and CID, because the CRC number is by the year, it will always stay the same if it's already been assigned. We made it easier for you to work on the case, because what happens when the transfer is approved, it's going to remove anybody who was working the case, because the idea is now that it's going to a different unit, someone from that new unit needs to be assigned to it. So we've kind of made the navigation a little bit easier. If you still wanted that agent from the previous unit to work on it, again, you can just click add and locate them. Maybe there's something that they need to update based on what you've found. So you have the ability to go back and still add them, even though you've accepted the case to your unit. So again, for case history, you see here now we have two case numbers, but it is one case. So if we were to look this up in the alerts database, it has a unique number. Both of these are searchable. So the sequence number 1 with CID 034 or CID 452 are searchable, and they will bring up the exact same case. One other thing I wanted to mention, if you receive the case and let's say you do a status report because something had changed or you got more information about the subject, in the status report itself, give me 1 second, let me add a user. I'll show you what that case history looks like. So we had saw it earlier when we submitted that first report, but now that we've transferred the case, you'll see a little bit of the difference in a couple items. So here, because the case is currently with the Fort Drum CID office, the subject of the report will have the current case number at the top. And if you go all the way to the bottom, it'll show the case history. So it started at Fort Hood and now it's with the Fort Drum CID office. And if it just happens to be transferred again, it would just append the other case number for that unit. But again, all of those numbers are searchable and will bring up the same case. Earlier, I showed you how to open a case if you know the case number. You can also open the case by that CRC number. So in the instance of the one we just did, I just know that it's 91, I believe is what it was. So if I click search, I get the same case that we were just working on. And if I go back to the main page, there's also a case search here. So I can look up by another unit, cases that I'm assigned, if it's just specific to law enforcement reports or ROIs, the case date that it was initiated. So there's a number of different items you can search on, depending on what you're looking for in the case. And again, once you get those results, because we're in the training site, I'm not sure. We'll see what it has here. You'll see here the case results. And one good thing to note here, that case that we just transferred, you're also going to get the original case number and the current case number. That just shows you it started at Fort Hood and is now at Fort Drum. And you can save this also to Excel if you needed to. I am going to show you the name check. So under the search, you've got a name check, property search, case text. For today and for timing purposes, the name check is probably one of the most important ones in here. So if someone, even if they are a subject, a victim, a witness, or just a parent, a guardian, or related to someone in a case, you can conduct a name check and see what cases they are included in. So for instance, I'll just use that entity we had looked at earlier. So you can search by social, last four, their EIPI, driver's license, any of those forms of ID. So I'll just use the one. You can also narrow down your search by unit or installation. If you know where they were born, you can put that in. Again, not required. It's just at a minimum, you have to put in one of these items here, whether it be a social or a name. And just be aware, we do audit these searches as well. So if people are looking up their friends or looking up themselves, that is all audited. So it's not like you can just go in here and search anything and everything. I mean, you do have to have a legitimate reason for conducting a name check, not just because your friend wants you to look them up. So in here, I search by social, and what I'll see at the bottom is all the cases. So as you'll see, you don't have to just be a subject, a victim. You can just be in the case, having some involvement. Maybe you were just, they were just there. So you'll see case number, if there is a 4833, their ID number, name, and then the entity type will tell you if they're a subject, a victim. If there's nothing in here, that just means they could be a witness or just somehow some other involvement. Like I said, just being there. And then there's some other information just to save space. We obviously can't include everything about a case on this results, but you do have the option. If you click select here, it's going to give you more details about the case. So does it have a report? When did it occur? This particular person, it'll also let you know if they have any weapons in the system. So that's very helpful, especially if the military police are at someone's house or a different location. They can know if the person has any weapons on at their location, their home.
Yeah, so just jumping in here, and again, that's what I was talking about before when I said, use CID only sparingly, because if it's an MP that's doing a name check before they go to somebody's facility or their house or whatever, and you mark that case CID only, they won't see it. It won't come up in the name check, and so when they look at this, they won't realize this. And so if there's a history or if there's weapons registered, or in this registration it could be a dog, it could have the canine registered there. That's the information that's we potentially want them to see. So in the future we may look at limiting further what kind of information they can see on a CID case, but just be very judicial when you use CID only or any of the other things that will keep things from appearing in a name check. Over.
And then from here, you can print the summary. It's just a PDF of everything you're seeing on here. But additionally, if you wanted to see what was in the case, you can click the case number. As Mr. Stanton mentioned, if it's marked CID only, it doesn't show up in the results. So it's important to distinguish if you do check that, the MPs will not see it. As
right,
part of their name check.
So likely what we may do in the future without using or abusing CID only is if an MP looks this up, maybe they can only see that action tab, that selection, and instead of it being a hot link on the case number on the left-hand side, MPs will only be able to click on the MP cases, not the CID cases, to see more. So that's kind of what we're looking at. Over.
Right. So we do have some other information when you do a name check. If the individual, and again, we're on the training site, so you typically may not have someone barred this many times, but if they are barred from going on an installation, that would be here. The MPs do track tickets, which are essentially a violation if they have points or a fine, maybe speeding, using a cell phone while they were driving on post. You'll be able to see that. And if they've been completely revoked, or if they have a limited suspension of where they can go on post. So that's all of those that are in there as well. And additionally, for name check, you can do name checks on businesses, local government. If you have religious organizations that you work with in your cases, you could do name checks on all of those. The fields for these are going to be slightly different just because we capture different information. Obviously, a business isn't going to have a date of birth, so it didn't make sense to have that here, but you'll see what you can search for when you go through each of these other tabs. But the results cases that come back for these are all going to have the same columns and the same functionality if you needed to view more information. So we do have a few options for reports. We'll look at both of them, but essentially the difference between standard reports and ad hoc, your standard reports, you can look at them as like a canned report. You can't change them. They're kind of static. They've got certain criteria and certain results that are there. And the ad hoc query has a little more flexibility if you're trying to customize your own report. So you'll see here under standard reports, and again, this is a permission as well. There's a number of reports. Some of these are geared towards the MPs. I had just mentioned the tickets that they issue in the system, the barrings that they put in, but you've got some reports here. If you wanted to see what commander's actions you have open, some of these other ones are related to the vehicle registration that as far as CID you may not use. Again, the name check audit, if people are running a name check, you can see in this audit report, and I will show you real quick what that looks like. For a certain date range, you can see what they searched by, if they clicked, and if they clicked a case. So a lot of these canned reports are either Excel or PDF format. Obviously, if they're Excel, once you save them to your computer, if you needed to change them, you can. The PDFs can't be changed. But give this 1 second. And what this is going to show while this is opening, so you'll be able to see what ID I used, if I typed in a name, if I clicked a case from that name check audit, you'll be able to see this. Obviously, we have other auditing we do, but this is just kind of a high level. You can see what a particular person queried on within that date range you entered. I apologize. Some of the other reports, if you're looking for commander's actions that are open, we do provide an open case report. So if you wanted a full list of cases that are still being worked or cases that are being finalized, there's an open case report. Again, really, these standard reports are kind of canned, so you can't change them. We've added some over time. So if you start working with them and there's some other things that are helpful, we do take suggestions and then we submit them to the change control board for them for review. And then, but as you can see here, anything with Excel just gives you dates, times. As you can see here, what I searched on for that particular name check. Each report's going to have a little bit of a different information depending on what you're looking for, but this is just kind of what the format of all those Excel reports will look like. And you can get a full listing of all these standard reports, but in general, any of them, they're going to ask you for some criteria, whether it be a date, time. Some of these, like I said, the open case report has a couple other criteria before you can generate it, your unit, status, what type of case it may be. And then this one in particular, just because over time it was more helpful for people to see it in Excel where they could sort it. We've provided both of those. Under reports, ad hoc reporting or queries, this is available to any user. So if you have an alerts account and it's active, you can create your own query. This is not meant, essentially, just putting it simply, is not meant to be a crim-intel search. This is meant to be for you to create your own report that may not be available in the standard reports. As you start looking at this, you'll see there's numerous amounts of information that you could add to your query. The more you add, the longer it will take to process. So, our good rule of thumb is start small, check the results. You can always add more, and then kind of work with it there to see, to get your results back. But we tried to make this as easy and user-friendly to use. So you'll see here, everything is grouped as you saw it in a case. So every tab, incident, entity, offense, everything is grouped together. So in order to start it, I'm just going to do a pretty simple one. You can expand the case. So if you just wanted, let's say I want to see how many cases I created last year, or how many cases were created at Fort Hood last year. So we'll do case number, initiation date, because that's going to be the date it was created, the unit or installation, and then we'll just, like I said, it's always good rule of thumb, keep it simple, and then you can always go back and add it. So what I'm doing now, criteria, you could consider that, what columns do you want to see in that report? So once you know what columns you want to see, you can go to your filters, and this is going to refine what you're going to get back. So at this point, if I didn't filter on anything, it is going to give me every case that exists in Fort Drum. So I may not want that, because depending on how busy the year is or what happened, you could get a lot of results. So you may, if you're just looking for, let's say within the last year, so we'll go back to April of last year. I'm actually going to add Fort Hood just so you can see the results. So again, this query, is filtering further down what results I'm going to get. I've already picked what columns I need, the case number, the date, and the unit. I now want to filter down because I don't want to get everything back. I just want to get the last year. So once I've done that, I'll click the results. It'll process it. Again, because I keep it simple at first, it's pretty quick to come back. I can see 3 cases were created last year, when they were created, and where they exist. And then if it's a query that you do often, you can save it to your account. With a name, and then you can always open it again. You can also save it to Excel. So if you needed to make a graph or a chart of some kind, once you save it to Excel, you can do that. If you wanted to add more information, let's say, for example, well, now I want to see the name of the subject. I can go back to my criteria and I'll go down to the entity involvement and I'll select subject. I'll go back up to my filters. I don't have to do anything here because it's just going to give me the name. But it's always a good idea to just review your filters once if you're changing your criteria, always just go back through your filters to double check. And then in your results, you're now going to see the subject's name. So again, the criteria, what columns you want to see, the filter narrows down what results you're going to get, and your results are your results. And then you can save your query, go back to it later, or edit it. Let's say you want to change your date range for another time frame, you can do that, or you can save it to Excel. Again, it's not really supposed to be a Crim-Intel search. We have other systems for that, but it's a good tool to use if you're looking for something that's not provided in the standard reports and you're looking for something for the cases.
Yeah, so if I could make two points. One is the should be obvious one. The more you fill in, the more you can query on. But the other point that goes along with that is it's as always garbage in, garbage out. If you don't spell something right or you don't, you're only going to get back the information that's put in. But once you start using the queries, you're going to find out how important it is to fill in as much as possible, even those things that don't have an asterisk next to them, right? There's lots of empty fields. And that said, anything that you fill in some form or another, whether through this query or a query that you can submit to your Crim-Intel folks or up to us here, anything that's in the system can be queried. And like I said before, CID data goes back to about 1987, MPs, circa 2004. So we've got a plethora of data out there that's available for, analyzing and comparisons. We've got some other tools like Katie was talking about. The Crim-Intel folks have something called Business Objects. That's a very powerful tool. We're building a lot of reports in this thing called Power BI that we're getting ready to make available once we get our licensing through contracting. So there's lots of information in there, but it's only as good as what you put in, right? And as we keep mentioning, every query that you do, we do audit, so we do know what you queried for, when you did it, and what kind of results you got back. And we can see if you view a file, we can see if you've downloaded a file, all that sort of stuff. So, keep it obviously within reason. And as far as keeping it within reason, don't do overly broad queries. Try to, as Katie indicated, try to refine it as much as possible before you go to your query results, because this is, it does eat up resources on the alert system. So if everybody's querying for everything at the same time in alerts, it's going to take a while for you to get your results back.